Hello guys, it is Gate of Theories here, and it has now been 6 months since My Mum Tracy Beaker finally dropped. I don't know if you can remember, but the hype for this to come out was absolutely massive. Back in August of 2020, it was revealed that Jacqueline Wilson's book, My Mum Tracy Beaker, was going to be the next Tracy Beaker franchise to be adapted onto the screen. And with Danny Harmer confirmed to be returning to play the famous Tracy Beaker for the third time, speculation went insane. For the next 6 months, there was theories, rumours, and just overall excitement for this show of who else could be returning. Will it relate to the story of Tracy Beaker and Tracy Beaker Returns? Will it join forces with the DG? And it wasn't just the current fans of the Dumping Ground who were invested. Past fans from all years, to the original people who watched the first series of the story of Tracy Beaker, to the fans of Tracy Beaker Returns, this show was meant to be huge. But was it? Did it live up to the hype? And 6 months later, and now a year on from when it was first announced, is it still at all relevant, or has it just been blatantly forgotten? Well, today I thought we'd look at exactly that. I have rewatched My Mum Tracy Beaker again, and I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on whether the project was a success, a fail, or just simply for commercial gain by the BBC. But before we go any further, please make sure that you've clicked that red subscribe button down below and have your notifications turned on so that you get notified anytime we make any brand new Tracy Beaker videos. So, before we look at whether My Mum Tracy Beaker stood the test of time, was it actually successful in the first place? And the simple answer to that is definitely. Like I've said, the hype of having returning characters played by original actors such as Danny Harmer returning as Tracy, Lisa Coleman as Cam, Ruth Gemmell as Carly, and fan favourite Montana Thompson returning as Justine Littlewood, it was bound to get this massive fan base absolutely hyped. Already the book was successful, but with the possibility of literally any character from the show's almost 20 years span returning was just so huge, and this hype kept on increasing the weeks leading up to the premiere. And then finally the day came, and this show broke records, it was that successful. CBBC even mentioned that it was mainly adults and returning fans who'd just grown up not with the Dumping Ground but the original story of Tracy Beaker and Tracy Beaker Returns, who returned to CBBC just to watch the return of Tracy Beaker as a mum. The BBC revealed that February Friday 12th's first episode that aired on CBBC drew in an average audience of 492,000 viewers, but on iPlayer a massive 2.1 million streams during its opening weekend. Now, those figures might not seem huge, but you have to remember this is only a British kids TV channel, and it was enough to make My Mum Tracy Beaker CBBC's most successful show ever for viewers. If we allow streaming to be a part of it, this just puts My Mum Tracy Beaker up with the heights of when Tracy Beaker Returns Series 3 was airing, and arguably CBBC's most successful show ever, The Sarah Jane Adventures, which still holds the top spot for the most live viewers on CBBC, being The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith Part 2, where none other than David Tennant's 10th Doctor came into the show, getting 1,090,000 live viewers. Patricia Hidalgo, Director of Children's and Education at the BBC, said, "These viewing figures are extraordinary. We've had an overwhelmingly positive reaction to My Mum Tracy Beaker from viewers of all ages." So this all seems very positive. So you might be wondering why I'm questioning whether the show was a success or not, as it clearly looks like it was a success. But this was only the initial reaction, and since then, the show hasn't really been talked about much, and I mean like at all. Now, I get after a while shows die down a bit, but My Mum Tracy Beaker just seems, to me at least, to have completely disappeared as if it never even happened in the first place. So, before I get into the reasonings why and the information I have, I just want to point out, in fairness, this show is only a movie's length long. It was never going to be able to compete against the likes of The Story of Tracy Beaker Returns, and The Dumping Ground. Plus, this show did come out during a pandemic, so it was never going to be perfect. But anyway, let's get into it. Firstly, this show was put out in the most awkward way possible by the BBC that ended up setting a lot of fans, as it wasn't clear at all how you were meant to watch the show in the first place. Saying that, it's still not clear whether this is a series, or a movie split into 3 parts. The BBC, for some very stupid reason, decided to do a sort of My Mum Tracy Beaker weekend special and release all episodes on that weekend, premiering every night on CBBC at 5, with a new episode coming out each night. Now, that all seems fine, however, iPlayer seemed to have a whole other idea of what was going on. If you were just watching live TV, you had to wait 3 days to watch the full thing, but if you went to iPlayer, all the episodes were just live, waiting to be watched right from the get-go. And this wasn't clear to the public at all. I can remember this affecting me as well. I'd watched it live and was waiting till the next day to watch the second episode, but then within the next hour, already there was massive spoilers across social media of what happens in the rest of the episodes. And this unclear way of how to watch it, whether you watch it on iPlayer all in one go, or watch it day by day and have the possibility of it being blatantly spoiled for you on social media, kind of left a dent in the show. Then, this all wasn't helped by the fact that it was just a weekend, and then it was kind of like the BBC was just done with this show. I get the show is only 3 episodes long and can be viewed as a film, but at the end of the day, this show could have lasted for 3 weeks where everyone had to wait, and the hype and anticipation could have been built across the weeks while you waited for the next episode to air. It seems My Mum Tracy Beaker was originally planning for this, as every episode ends with a cliffhanger that gets you hooked to go to the next one. Like, imagine if they hadn't released it all on iPlayer and you had to wait a week before the next episode, and you've just seen Sean proposing to Tracy. It's a big enough hook for people to want to return and to see what happens next. It seems like a strange strategy from the BBC to do, as it kind of meant that the hype of it just sort of stopped after the weekend happened, whereas instead it could have lasted for a whole month of pure non-stop talking about My Mum Tracy Beaker and anticipating about what would happen next in each episode. And then, at the end of the day, the show or movie just wasn't really what people had anticipated it to be. It was as if it didn't even know what it wanted to be. You had all of these returning characters and references to past episodes which brought back old fans, yet the continuity at times just seemed to be thrown out of the window. Like, I still can't really tell whether we class My Mum Tracy Beaker as canon, with Tracy Beaker Returns, The Dumping Ground and the Story of Tracy Beaker, or like its own separate little entity. I like to think it's canon and fits with the storyline, but it's so hard to tell. There was also no references to modern day Dumping Ground, like Tracy Beaker returning to Mike's wedding for the current fans as well. And this kind of just sort of turned into a bit of a mess, with characters half of the time acting like we always knew they'd act, and then other times acting the complete opposite. And I think this can be seen with Tracy, Justine, Cam, and Carly. Speaking of which, there's literally no explanation as to why Tracy and Carly are just randomly speaking now, and there's no background as to what happened to Tracy after she stopped being a care worker. At the end of the day, this is what fans care about, how these shows connect. If the creators wanted My Mum Tracy Beaker to be completely separate, they needed to make that specifically clear. But we had people like Danny Harmer hinting that it all connected, so it was just very confusing. And the biggest thing of all is that at the end of the day, people were only here because it was Tracy Beaker. Like, if you have to be honest with yourself, would you have watched this show if it wasn't Tracy Beaker? I reckon at least 99% of viewers did only watch it because they have nostalgia of how great Tracy Beaker is. However, this was a very different show to the ones we're used to, and mainly focused on Jess Beaker and didn't focus that much on the angry Tracy Beaker in care or other care kids like the other shows did. Now, for fans of the book, this was fine, but for the majority of fans who only watched the TV shows, this came as quite a big shock. And unfortunately, the show just didn't feel the same as the other shows and kind of felt like a completely different vibe. And this wasn't helped by the trolls online who on purposely just pointed out how much the actors had changed and how bad the shows had become. Now, I really did like this show, but there's a reason why I haven't really watched it a lot since, because it really does just feel like a one-time thing. Tracy Beaker Returns and The Dumping Ground I watch on repeat constantly. This, however, I just haven't really felt the need and want to. I'm glad it came out and I'm glad I watched it, but at the end of the day, I only watched it because I'm a fan of this franchise, else I really don't think I would have. And it looks like you guys share my opinion on the matter. I did a poll on this YouTube channel which I will link down below in the description for you guys to check out and vote for yourself if you haven't already, a month on from when My Mum Tracy Beaker premiered, to see what your guys' thoughts on it was. And the results were pretty interesting. Interestingly, 56% of people said it was absolutely successful and 29% said it was okay, with only 5% saying it was awful. But then, exactly 6 months later from when the show came out on the 12th of August, I did a similar poll and the results were interesting to see how the thoughts had changed. Now, this poll was only put up a few days before this video is going up, so it does have less votes currently, but it's interesting to see how the attitude has changed. Now, only 21% say they loved it, and 40% admitted they only watched it because it was Tracy Beaker. And 14% said it was a forgettable show, showing it didn't really have a big impact at all, probably because of how the BBC premiered it. And now, more people said they just didn't like it, with it growing from 5% on the last post to now 14% on this new post. I just think it's interesting to see how after 6 months of no news of My Mum Tracy Beaker, and just letting people process it, it's shown that initially the show was a massive success, but hasn't exactly stood the test of time, and seems now more forgotten, which makes you question whether it was just for commercial gain. And then, just for fun, a month after the show was released, I also put out a poll asking what everyone's favourite Tracy Beaker show is, and the results were not surprising at all. But to be fair, My Mum Tracy Beaker only has 3 episodes. With no surprise, Tracy Beaker Returns smashes it with 48%, and My Mum Tracy Beaker comes last of the main shows with only 7%. And if we look at IMDb, this poll basically reflects the same, with Tracy Beaker Returns getting 7.2 out of 10, but My Mum Tracy Beaker getting the lowest out of all the shows with only 6 out of 10, which is still big for a kids show, but low for this franchise. But anyway guys, that is the end of the video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, make sure that you smash that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Guys, I want to hear all your thoughts about this in the comment section down below. Do you think My Mum Tracy Beaker was a success or a failure? Has this last 6 months changed your mind on the show? I know originally I was in love with the show, but it became very forgettable for me with only a few weeks after. Have you ever rewatched it since? And of course, do you reckon what we've discussed in this video will affect how Series 2 is viewed? Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comment section below. And as always, we've been here on Gated Theories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.